everybody, Shark Scrapper. A lot of people really enjoyed the detailed weighted average cost breakdown that I did on that last batch of Dell Optiplex PCs. They asked for me to do a repeat doing another model. So we have enough of the Optiplex 390s that we can repeat the exercise. Just like before, we have 10 Optiplex 390s here, 177 pounds. We have recorded that weight, so it's time to start breaking them down. Come on, let's dive in. All right, we're all set up just like we were before. Let's go ahead and make it happen. This one is a little more standard with the 4 screws in the back. And we have a lid that latch. This one is going to be a little more challenging because it's a little more complex inside, as you can see. Yeah, the first one always takes time because I've got to figure out how I'm going to proceed with it. We've got cables here to cut rather than pull that piece out because that piece is just going to end up in the shred anyway. There we go. Now we've got all the power cables disconnected. We get the power supply out of the way. We have 2 RAM sticks. This looks like an I series. Yep, it's a crooked arm. So this takes time now. This is added time, but it could be added value. I32, no, I32s are not in the functional test program. More time. Got to take the faceplate off in order to get the CD-ROM out of here. And with these faceplates, I put them back on because the scrapyard doesn't care. And there's a wire that gets wrapped around back in here. That's a pretty deep cavity, so I'm going with the extender just to make sure I get some good straight approaches on all the screws. Let's get that battery out of the way. Ooh, that's ready to go like it is. No screws. Tiny little board. Gold. And that spindle is not brass. This heatsink requires a little extra work. probably should have separated that plastic. Yeah, I'm not going to worry about it. Kind of in the noise. This idea was courtesy of my friend Raffle Scrapper. I love it. All right, you go back in here with the shred part. You go here, aluminum. That's it for the shell. And we cut the wire off of that. Alright, and that was 5 minutes and 48 seconds. Alright, well, I don't believe you need to see me repeat that scrap 10 more times. Here's what the time chart looked like. We started out with our first one at 5.8 minutes. And overall, we did improve our time. Our last scrap was 4 minutes. Now, one thing to note, this one here that went up to 4.85, that one actually had a hard drive in it. So that one was an anomaly in the sense that I had to adjust for the hard drive being in there. But the rest of them had no hard drive, and you can see that overall our time did improve. So our empty shells and miscellaneous little metal bits was 128 minus 2 pounds for the white bucket, 126. 10 power supply units, no wire, 25 pounds. 10 green motherboards, metal small socket, 10 pounds. 10 aluminum heat sinks, 4 pounds. My yard will buy those as extruded aluminum. Insulated copper wire number 2, 4 pounds. Now remember, your yard may want those ends cut off. And if you do have to cut those ends off, then some of these are going to be gold connector ends. And some of that wire your yard may not take as number 2 insulated copper wire, but they'll downgrade it. So remember, you need to know your yard. But for me, 4 pounds, number 2 insulated copper wire. 10 pinless CPUs, 0.59. Interesting, I think the 10 that we got from the others were 0.57, so very close together there. CD-ROM boards, 0.42. RAM, 0.48. And the fans, which I will sell as copper bearing motors, 2.18 pounds. Well, we have a good news, bad news situation. The good news, there was a representative hard drive inside one of the PCs. Now we know what was in there so that we can do an accurate analysis for if these all had hard drives. But it means I have to do a little extra math in order to account for the fact that one of them had a hard drive and not all of them. So let's see, what is this hard drive? 0.86 pounds. We're just going to use the same spreadsheet that we did when we were calculating the cost analysis for the 780s. The first iteration is going to be with no hard drives. You can see we have all of the same major components listed. But in this case, none of these PCs had a mid-grade printed circuit board or a brass spindle in the CD-ROM. We have the weights that we recorded. The only difference here is going to be down in the total weight. In the video, I recorded 177 pounds, but one of those PCs had a hard drive in it at 0.86 pounds, so I have recorded the total weight for all 10 of them if they were empty as 176 pounds because that floor scale measures in 1 pound increments. If we had sold them to board sort at 25 cents a pound, we would have gotten $44. But because we scrapped them out, we got all of this money here, so we ended up with $49.25, so a difference of $5.26. All right, now let's look at just real quick weighted average of the contribution for the money, and we can see both from this chart and from the numbers over here that the green motherboards were still the main contributor at 33.5%, followed by, again, the RAM, and even though the RAM only contributed 0.27% of the weight, it was almost 22% of the value. Shred came in again at third with 14.7, almost 15% of the value. In this case, it actually made up almost 72% of the weight, compared to 64 or something, 65% in the 780s. So the bigger shells added more weight, and still made up the number 3 most important item in the value. And then we have the CPUs at fourth place, 7.19%. You can see graphically what that looks like. Here's the hard drives. Here's the RAM. This is the weighted average dollar value of each of those components. Here's the shred, followed by the CPUs. Here's the insulated copper wire. Here's the power supplies with no wire. Here's the aluminum heat sinks here, and then the CD-ROM boards. Now, if we want to take a look at what our time was worth, then we would take, in this case, I took the average of all 10. So the average of the time that it took me to scrap all 10 of them was 4.61 minutes. That was 0.08 hours. I don't know why that's showing with a dollar value. That should have just been a number, So here we can fix that real quick. Format cell, number. Okay, there we go. 0.08 hours. The value difference here, remember, we take 49.26, we subtract 44 for $5.26. That was for 10 PCs, so divide that by 10. You get a difference of 53 cents. Technically 0.526, but it rounds to 53 cents. So in order to calculate our time, we take the 53 cents, we divide it by the 0.08 hours, and we get $6.85 an hour. That's not good. Not good. Not really worth my time, to be scrapping these out. But hey, they were in the mix, so, right, you're banging through this, and, at least now I know, if I had seen a palette of nothing but 390s, now I'm a little bit smarter, and I'm going to say to myself, I'm not going to bid anywhere near what I was bidding before, because I'm not getting a whole lot of value out of them. All right, then, let's see what difference the hard drives are going to make to this. All right, so now if we were to add the hard drives in, so we've got the hard drives listed here, and we're going to come down here and we're going to say that there were 10 hard drives at 0.86. So 10 hard drives, 0.86, that's going to be 8.6. We're going to call it 9 pounds, so this would be 185 pounds. That would have been the total weight for all of the PCs with the hard drives in them. And yeah, that's the only thing we need to do to adjust this calculation. So what has that done for us? We see that the motherboards still make up the bulk of the value, but they're only 31% of the total value now. Remember, without the hard drives, they were 33 and a half. So 31%. The RAM is 19.8, almost 20%. What was it without the hard drives? It was 21.5%. So here is the shred is now only 13.6%. It used to be 14.6, and now the hard drives come in at 7.4% of the total value. The hard drives contributed a total of $3.96 to what we got out of this shred. And graphically, here's what that looks like. Here's the green motherboards. Here's the RAM. Here's our shred. And now here's our hard drives at 7%. And because of the round off, you see that the hard drives and the CPUs are both showing at 7%, about equal value here, with the insulated copper wire coming in right behind them at 6%, and the power supplies at 6%. So we end up with the scrap value being $53.22. If we had sold them to board sort at 25 cents a pound, we would have picked up $46.25. So that is a difference of roughly $7. So for 10 PCs, that's a difference of 70 cents. Our time again would change that cell back to a number. There we go. So 0.08 hours, so that means now our return on investment was $9 an hour. It's a little bit better, but it's still nothing to write home about. The scrap value here, and you can see that the scrap value was calculated as the 53.22 divided by the 185. So the scrap value, 29 cents a pound. So you know, if you're clever and careful and you know you have enough information about the PCs when you're bidding, you could underbid this, sell the PCs whole, and try to make a little bit of money. Otherwise, got to be really careful here what you're bidding, because, yeah, these are 29 cents a pound. So, you know, if you're bidding anything at 25 cents or less a pound, you're making money. But when you factor in the 4 to 5 minutes that it takes you to scrap these things, you're just not making a whole lot for your time. So whereas the 780s, here, let's go back to, here's the 780s. The 780s, we were making $25 an hour scrapping those with the hard drives. But with these 390s with the hard drives, we're only making $9 an hour. So big, big difference. Just gives you an idea of the fluctuation that can go on. And yeah, each PC is roughly $5. You see here is the scrap value, 53.22 for 10 of them. So that means they were $5.30 each. So, and when we did the hard drives here, they were $6.30 each. So yeah, the 780s just represented better value. They were smaller, had better value components, and they just brought more to the game. So our 390s, man, I'm glad there weren't that many of them. I'm glad that most of the PCs that are in these lots are 780s. I feel good about making that money, and we're just going to have to eat the time that we spent, you know, only earning $9 an hour here. Now, there is something really important that I want to point out You may have picked up on it when I was scrapping this, the CPU. So this takes time now. This is added time, but it could be added value. i3-2, no, i3-2s are not in the functional test program. But had it been a 3000 series, it would have been $1 in function if it was a functional CPU. So I could have packed it up, sent it to board sort, and possibly made $1 on each one of those. For those of you that are a little bit new to this, let me show you what I mean. Here's the boardsort.com website. And if we go to the test and buy prices, these are the CPU, i-series CPUs that BoardSort buys in their test and buy. You can see that what we had was an i3-2 something, and it's only scrap value for a pinless CPU. But had it been an i3-3 something, we could have potentially made $1 per CPU. Now this is a very good program that BoardSort offers. I have taken advantage of it and made some really good money over the time. Many people here in the US have had the advantage to make some really good money off of i-series CPUs. You can see up to $150 per CPU for the newer generation of CPUs. So very good program offered by BoardSort. But in this case, we had the potential to make $1 if these had just had one generation newer CPU. Here, you know what? Let's go ahead and play this game real quick. Here's what we're going to do. I don't want to mess up the chart here, so I'm going to copy this one. I'm going to put it into a new spreadsheet. Let me get rid of you because we're going to have to redo you. Oops. That's going to have to be redone. All right, we're going to label you cost analysis 390 i-series. Just so we know that it's a little different. Now in this case, we're going to take this and I'm going to change the name of this to an i3-3XX. And now, had those tested positive, these numbers would not matter. I have to leave the weights there because the weight would be important. But this would now become $10. So what kind of difference does that make? Wait a minute, we're going to have to re-rack and stack here. So we need to come down here and bring up our tool ribbon. And we're going to sort, custom sort, weighted average, largest to smallest, and boom, we resort. And I want to go ahead and put in the chart again. So we go insert, pie chart, we do a simple pie chart. Let's bring you over here. Oops. And yeah, you know, this doesn't look like anything because right now we're saying dollar per pound. So what we go in here is select data. And we'll get rid of these because we don't want to see this stuff. Now, all we're going to look at is the weighted average of the dollars. There we go. That's what I want right there. All right, so now this is kind of interesting because if the CPUs had been i3 somethings and they all worked, we would have made $10 on those. That would have bumped them up to third place. That pushes them above the shred value. So we have our motherboards at 27%, the RAM at 17, almost 18%, and then the CPUs at 16.7. And you can see here the RAM was bringing in $10.50 and the CPU is $10. So a little bit newer generation CPU could have made all the difference in the world on the value of these PCs. And if we look here at the difference that it would have made for our labor efforts, now we see that our labor difference would have been $1.34 per PC, which when divided by 0.08 hours would have meant that now we're earning $17.47 an hour. And, you know, in a lot of places, $15 an hour is the minimum wage. So that's not a terrible return on investment for the time spent to scrap these. But it's dependent on the type of i-series CPU that is in the PC. If you found this video useful, please give it a thumbs up and tell your friends about it. I am going to link back to the original 780 video that I did that will make it easy for you to compare the two. And if you missed that one, it'll take you back there so you'll be able to see that discussion as well. There's another link taking you to more Shark Scrapper content. And the round one in the middle is to help you subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. Have a great day, everybody.